Much of the success country music has enjoyed can be attributed to two men that call Louisville home, Pee Wee King and Red Stewart, and to a song they wrote in 1946. The song is The Tennessee Waltz.
I was waltzing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend
It was released in 1948 as a hillbilly song that enjoyed considerable popularity. It was recorded as a pop tune in 1950 by Patti Page. The unusual thing about her version of the song is it was an unexpected hit, the B-side of the record. The A-side, or the side that was expected to be a hit, was a quickly forgotten Christmas tune called the Santa Claus Boogie.
I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling.
Played a Saturday date, got off early, and was listening to the Grand Ole Opry, and we heard Bill Monroe singing Kentucky Waltz, which was a big hit and a beautiful song. And Pee Wee says, you know, you're a heck of a Tennessean. You come from Tennessee. We're working out of Tennessee. Bill Monroe from Kentucky has written the Kentucky Waltz, and we haven't written anything about Tennessee. I said, well, let's rectify that, Pee Wee. So we started looking for something to write on. You just don't normally carry manuscript paper in a luggage truck.
Well, tell them what finally wound
back
up
in
with.
those days, I was an advocate of the cigar smokers. And I used to carry the not the penny boxes, but the nickel boxes of matches in the glove compartment. So we threw the matches out the window and tore open the carton, and on the back of that matchbox cover was the original version of the lyrics to the Tennessee Waltz.
That's right.
Naturally, when we got back to Nashville, we put it down in the proper form and so forth, and the rest of it was history.
Since 1948, versions of the Tennessee Waltz have been recorded by many artists, including Roger Williams, big studio orchestras, and even jazz groups like the Ramsey Lewis Trio. The future integration of America's popular music forms and country music's commercial popularity can be tied directly to the success of this beautiful song. Pee Wee King, one half of the musical team responsible for the Tennessee Waltz, was born Julius Frank Anthony Kozinski in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was called Pee Wee for his small stature, but he didn't really mind and changed his name legally to Pee Wee Frank King.
I wait, and then you're late again. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, quarter to 10. Why should I linger every time? I wanted to be a draftsman so I could work in my uncle's optical shop. And I went to vocational school. And after studying for about 6 or 7 months, I got to thinking, here's summertime, and I'm missing playing dates around the country, playing dances and weddings and everything. And I was making $5 a week in one hand, while the other hand I was making $12 a week playing music. I said, I'm going to drop the one that makes $5 and play music for a living. And I knew what I wanted to do when I was a young boy.
Pee Wee King got his big break in show business thanks to, of all things, a bent automobile fender.
And at that time, Mr. Frank, who later became my father-in-law, was managing Gene Autry. We had a high school band called the King's Jesters, and we were broadcasting at that time in Racine, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee. And they had an auto accident right out of Racine, and they towed one of the cars in to the garage so they could pull the fender away and make the rest of the trip for a Sunday date they were playing. And Mr. Frank heard the radio show while he was in the garage in a service station, and he asked the service station manager, he said, who's that gang? He says, Frankie King and the King's Jesters. And he says, they're pretty good. He said, I wonder if any of them would want to work with us today. And he said, we got a show a few miles out of Milwaukee, and maybe they'd come to work. The guy says, why don't you call a radio station? And the irony of it is we had just signed off. I was going in through the lobby, and I happened to pick up the phone when it rang, and he said, I'd like to talk to the leader of the band. I said, that's me. And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Joe Frank. I said, well, how are you, Joe? And he says, I'm fine, but he says, we got trouble, and he says, I got Gene Autry going up to play a date. I said, who's Gene Autry? And that's the truth. I didn't know him. He said, he's the star of the Saturday night WLS Barness, and I said, well, we usually play on Saturday night. He said, well, this is a Sunday. Have you guys got anything to do? I said, no. He said, how would a couple of you like to go play Port Washington, Wisconsin at the theater? I says, fine. How much does the job pay, Curly?
With Joe Frank and Gene Autry, Pee Wee came to Louisville to work at WHAS Radio.
In 1930,
Pee Wee and the Golden West Cowboys landed a job in Nashville on the Grand Ole Opry.
we got called to Nashville to audition for the Grand Ole Opry. And we auditioned on a Friday night, and the judge asked us if we'd stay over Saturday and broadcast, and I said, no, we can't, because we've got a date at the theater in Horse Cave, Kentucky. And on the way home from Nashville, we played the theater Sunday, and then came back to Louisville, and 2 weeks later, we moved to Nashville.
In 1940, Red Stewart joined the band and quickly found his niche as musician and vocalist and Pee Wee's songwriting partner.
We used to hold fiddlers contests around the country, and I would get into them. Never won a whole lot, but had a lot of fun. And so anyway, I became a Golden West cowboy, and I've been with him ever since.
In addition to staying busy writing songs, recording records, and appearing on radio shows, Pee Wee and the band starred in several B-Western movies.
1938, on April 13th, on a Friday night, we were playing Good Hope, Alabama. And Gene Autry had called Mr. Frank, where Pee Wee King's show was playing at that time, and the operator says, I don't know Mr. Frank, but Pee Wee's at the schoolhouse at the auditorium. If you wait a while, I can go get him. He says, no, you just give him my number and have him call me when the show is over. So lo and behold, this lady closed the switchboard and came all the way to the schoolhouse and gave me Gene Autry's phone number to call him at home. And that was Friday the 13th, and of course we had to be in Hollywood on Wednesday right after that, and we took off like Snyder's dog.
And you made
Gold Mine in the Sky, which was one of the biggest money makers for Gene at that time.
After several movies and 10 years with the Grand Ole Opry, Pee Wee and the Golden West Cowboys returned to Louisville and to television.
Our songs became popular by pop people, so consequently, we felt that was good enough to go to the ballrooms, and we established ourselves as a great dance band throughout the nation. In fact, for 6 years, we were the #1 Western swing band in the country. So that was my version of saying why we left the Grand Ole Opry. We were visual, we were listenable, we were danceable, we were songwriters, and television was our forte at that time, and I took a gamble on it. I begged the boys, come on up to Louisville. They agreed. One or two dropped by the wayside. They didn't want to come up to Louisville, take the chance, but we did, and I'm grateful, and I'm sure Red can say the same thing.
Well, to sum it up in one good example, they don't build automobiles the same design and style that they did 20 years ago. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. It depends on who you're talking to. But I do think that as good businessmen, we recognize the fact that you have to change with the times. You have to give the customer what they want to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And even though I still appreciate what I call the dyed-in-the-wool Ricky Skaggs type of country, I recognize that there is a market for what we're hearing today and what they call the country feel. I don't put it down, I respect it, but my ear still goes back to the old way.
Tennessee walls. Now I know just
From its humble beginnings, country music has evolved into one of the most popular music forms of all time. Certainly it can be called the music of America. And the talented musical team of Pee Wee King and Red Stewart have helped it gain its place in America and the world. I'm Marvin Marhofer for Kentuckiana Sunday.